Hi, I'm Steve Coxan. Welcome to my fish room.
This is my project table where I like to play around with small tanks. Got the little P&W Custom just with some boost in it. Picked that up at Aquatics. Got a nice little 3-gallon cube that a friend gave me, and I had originally escaped it, but the moss has just completely overgrown everything. But the little red riding hood shrimp and least gilly fry that I've got in there, just love all that hiding space. And then I also got this little JBJ nano tank. It's a little 6-gallon peninsula, and I just have a goby and a pistol shrimp in there along with some super easy corals. It was originally in my office. I brought it home at the start of the pandemic and have redone it a few times. It's a 3-gallon bookshelf from Tideline. So it's a perfect tank for shrimp, and I've got a paintball CO2 on it. Paintball CO2 is really too small for the other tanks that I had, but on this one it's adequate. I have to have it turned down and actually have to have it go off for 15 minutes every hour just so it doesn't overdo the CO2. But I've got Marsilia and Monte Carlo and a little bit of hairgrass in there. And just a super easy tank. I feed the shrimp a couple times a week, some Shrimp King Complete and some Bacter AE, and then just dose the tiniest bit of Tropica fertilizer, just like a drop or two a couple times a week. Algae BBA drives a lot of people nuts. Sometimes you can just let it go, so I'm primarily a breeder. I do like beautiful tanks. This was driving me nuts, but I was watching all these juvenile Episto and Nereidae. The parents are not the best parents, with the male kind of hiding down there behind one of my tags. But the fry can all hide down in that BBA and the driftwood. If they get scared, here comes Dad. But I actually think it looks really cool. So when I set this tank up, it was for just growing out beautiful plants. Got the CO2 and everything on it. You can see they're all overgrown. It's been a little neglected. And I said I wasn't going to put any fish in here. And my 12-year-old was teasing me because she knew I couldn't not put fish in here. But I bred some really beautiful blue rim bettas, and they had 450 fry. So I've been working really hard to rehome fry. I had them in multiple tanks. They're down to like my last about 100 in this tank. So, and you can see they are just like, this guy is actively trying to eat my hand. Both of them are. They are just biting me. This little macroalgae tank is actually one of my kids' favorites because of this little peppermint shrimp that may usually eat out of my hand or eat out of my kids' hands. I've got my 7-year-old will stand on my water bucket here, my barrel, so he'll come right up to your fingers. And you know, I've got the reef tank with the corals in it. This one doesn't have any corals, it just has this guy and some hermit-crabs and some snails. And it's just an absolute favorite. And the inverts do so well in here. They do much better in here than like a clean, high, power reef. This just has a tiny little nitro filter in it, and I just change about 20% of the water every 2 to 4 weeks just to maintain levels. I do have to dose it, and I've actually been super busy with work, so I've missed a couple doses, so the macroalgae is not as green as it usually is. And I can just see that visually and know that I need to add some nitrates, phosphates, and iron, and I just add the tiniest amount. I just use the Brightwell and just add 1 or 2 drops of each of those. Usually I do that every day. So these are Sclear Mistax, which was separated from Corydoras sometime back. Barbatus, Sclear Mistax barbatus. They're one of my absolute favorite cories. I've got another species of Sclear Mistax down the bottom of there that are really cool, but they just group up. They spawn all the time in the tank. There were actually just some eggs there the other day. You can kind of see the remnants of where the eggs were. They don't lay a lot compared to others, but they'll lay like, somewhere between 5 and 15. So I just started off with a few. I've grown this school a little bit and rehomed some to friends. So they're really cool water cory. They don't like heat, so that's one thing to really consider with them. So I've got these little tanks on CO2. They're all severely overgrown because they started off for me to increase some plants for sale, but I ended up putting Epistos in all of them to grow out. I got some juveniles, and I'll probably move these guys to a 20 when they're ready, because that way they have room to raise their own fry. But this has Episto bitiniata in there. Got a few guppies and a random rainbow fish I don't even know how I ended up with. He's super happy to hang out with the guppies. But got a Pisto bitiniata pair in there, and they come out at dinner time. They're hiding right now. Here you can see a Pisto elizabethae. Got a really young pair that I'm growing up a little bit here before I move into a 20. And then I've got a lone female Pisto agassizii fire red in there. I need to find her a male. And here I've got my old angel pair. The female, and the poor male I think is actually in his old age is losing his eyesight. So I've got to really watch him and make sure he's eating properly. But this tank's also on CO2. It needs a major trim. It's one of the tricks with CO2 I've discovered is that I'm mostly a breeder and I like to let my fish grow up quite a bit and I get to choose when I pull them out. But with CO2 tanks, these plants are like on steroids. And I've actually removed most of the stem plants in favor of lilies, crypts, and lower growing plants because it was just too hard for me to keep up with. And they started off, they would only eat live foods when I got them, so that's a really important consideration if you're buying these, and they could be really hungry when you get them too. But I started feeding them on grindle worms and baby brine shrimp. But I would mix in just a tiny bit of crushed flakes with those. And part of that's for, I don't mind feeding live foods every day, I do, but if I go away for a week, you know, or so, these guys, I mean, most fish are fine for a week, these guys probably would be, but I really want to make sure that they're getting, you know, some nutrition. They're pretty small fish. Yeah. They just look so thin, I don't want to leave them without food. So being able to eat some dried foods is also just important for their health, even though I'm happy to feed the lives. So I acclimated them so they will actually eat crushed flakes. And now they'll eat it on their own too. So I love these guys. They're beautiful. They spawn all the time on the cone that's in the background. They're just so interactive. But they always eat their eggs. And there are artificial ways, I have not tried it yet, to raise discus fry, but that is really not why I'm in the hobby. I love parenting behavior. I was talking with the guy who's a big discus breeder in the area. I actually got these from him, and he's like, oh no, these pigeons are impossible. They don't raise their own fries. So he actually takes the cone and gets it to another pair of closer to wild type discus. And they raise the fry for them. That's really wild. I'm not really set up to have another tank with discus in it. I have to really think about that. But so yeah, for right now these guys are pets. If I'd done that, I might have gone for another variety that was more likely to spawn because while I love these guys and their color, I'm not going to get rid of them. They are truly pets. But I really would love to see that parenting behavior with the fry feeding off the adult size at some point. Pull out the smaller male because he has I just got him, and he's got probably a birth defect with his jaw, and I don't want to reproduce that. Right. It's funny to see that little guy flaring at the established male.
Got an attitude.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's probably going to have to come out though, because I'm afraid that both of those guys could end up with eggs in their mouth, because the female is very happy to do that. It's one of the challenges of breeding the maternal mouth breeders, that the males get eggs in their mouth so often and they don't eat for 2 weeks oftentimes.
Right.
Well, in some cases they'll spit out the eggs for a little while, come eat, and then go back and get their eggs in their mouth again. One day he was eating again, I didn't see any fries, like, oh no.
Yeah.
I lost, he ate them all. But no, then the next day he had his mouth full again, and then they were hatched shortly after that, so yeah, I've heard that could happen.
Yeah, sure.
So these are my juvenile Beta Palafina fry. They're about 25 in here. It's all from one. The male had all those eggs in his mouth and his throat for about 2 weeks. And then he spits them out, and they are growing really fast compared to a lot of fish that I raise, because they were just spit on February 26th, so less than 2 months ago. So they're about 2 months old and growing really well.